dawn in the polis, awakening to the rhythms of daily life. Imagine, if you will, that you find yourself stirring from sleep in the quiet haze of an ancient Greek dawn. The year is around 450 BCE, and you are in Athens, the heart of the polis, where the air carries the faint tang of olive groves and the distant murmur of the Aegean Sea. Your bed is simpler, low wooden frame draped with woolen blankets, perhaps stuffed with straw or dried herbs for a touch of comfort against the cool stone floor. As the first pale light filters through the narrow window slits of your modest home, you feel the chill of the terracotta tiles under your bare feet. There's no rush here. The day unfolds slowly, like the uncoiling of a scroll. Each moment deliberate and unhurried. You rise gently, your tunica chiton of linen or wool, depending on the season, clinging lightly to your skin. The fabric is rough, woven by hands in your household or traded from nearby weavers, dyed perhaps in muted earth tones from plants like madder, root, or indigo. Outside, the cocks crow sporadically, their calls echoing off the whitewashed walls of neighboring houses clustered along narrow, winding streets. These streets, paved unevenly with stones worn smooth by countless sandals, lead downhill toward the agora. But for now, you linger in the courtyard of your home. It's an open space, modest for a citizen of moderate means, with a small altar to Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, where a faint ember from last night's fire still glows. The air is crisp, laced with the scent of dew on fig leaves and the subtle earthiness of clay pots stacked nearby. You splash your face with water from a large amphora, drawn the day before from a public fountain where women gather to fill their hydriae, balancing them gracefully on their heads. The water is cool, almost bracing, carrying a mineral taste from the springs fed by Mount Hymettus. Hygiene is straightforward here, no elaborate baths yet, though later in the day you might visit the public ones if time allows. For now, a quick rinse suffices, perhaps with a sponge of natural fibers or a strigil to scrape away the night's residue as you move about. The household begins to stir. If you are a man of the oikos, the family unit, slavery is commonplace, a fact of life woven into the fabric of society, where bondsmen from conquered lands or debts perform the mundane tasks that free your mind for civic duties. One might be grinding barley on a corn stone, the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone, a soothing, repetitive sound that fills the air like a distant lullaby. The grains are coarse, stored in woven baskets to keep out mice, and they form the backbone of your daily sustenance. You pause to offer a small libation at the household altar, few drops of water or yesterday's wine, murmured, thanks to the gods for the new day. Religion permeates everything, not as grand ceremonies, but as quiet habits, a nod to Hermes for safe travels if you plan to venture out, or to Demeter for the earth's bounty. The gods are ever present in the olive trees that dot the landscape, in the bees that hum around thyme bushes, providing honey that sweetens the sparse meals. The light grows stronger now, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You might step outside briefly, feeling the pebbles underfoot, hearing the faint clip-clop of donkeys being led to market by farmers from the outskirts. Athens awakens gradually. The air fills with the smells of baking bread from communal ovens and the acrid smoke of olive wood fires. Your home, like many, is built of sun-dried bricks, with a tiled roof that leaks slightly during rains. But today the sky is clear, promising a warm attic sun in this era. Life revolves around the cycles of nature and the polis. You are not a king or a hero from the epics of Homer. Those tales are recited at gatherings. But your existence is more ordinary, tied to the land and the community. As a citizen, you might own a small plot of land, growing olives, grapes, and figs, or perhaps you trade in pottery or wool. The weird habits that define your evenings at banquets stem from these daily foundations: the foods you eat, the wines you drink, all rooted in the soil and seasons. Breakfast approaches, but it's no elaborate affair. You gather simple items: a loaf of barley bread, perhaps dipped in wine or olive oil, and a handful of olives or cheese from goat's milk. The bread is dense, chewy, made from immer wheat or barley, ground fresh and baked in a clay oven that still radiates warmth. You chew slowly, tasting the nuttiness of the grains, the saltiness preserved from the sea. Honey might drizzle over it if the hives have been generous. Its floral sweetness, a rare treat amid the austerity. As you eat, seated on a wooden stool or the edge of a stone bench, your thoughts drift to the day's obligations. The assembly might convene, or you have business in the agora, where philosophers like Socrates wander, engaging in quiet debates that challenge the mundane. But beneath it all lies the anticipation of evening repose, where the symposium, the banquet, unfolds with its peculiar customs. These gatherings are not mere meals, but rituals of bonding, where men recline on couches, sharing wine from a communal bowl, discussing everything from politics to poetry in a haze of diluted alcohol. The weirdness begins subtly: the habit of diluting wine with water, a practice born of necessity to avoid the excesses of Dionysus, yet leading to prolonged sessions where inhibitions loosen. Foods served are odd by modern standard zeal, from the rivers, thrushes caught in nets, or figs stuffed with cheese, all eaten with fingers, no utensils save for a knife to cut portions. The banquets emphasize equality among participants, yet exclude women of status, reserving space for Hittite courtesans who add wit and music. But for now, in the dawn's embrace, these are distant thoughts. You finish your sparse meal, wiping your hands on your chiton, feeling the day's potential unfold like the petals of a wildflower. The city hums softly, a vendor's distant call, the creak of a cartwheel, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Life here is repetitive, bound by seasons, planting in autumn, harvesting in summer, yet rich in unspoken resilience. Farmers endure droughts, relying on cisterns for water. Fishermen brave the seas for tuna and mullet, salting them for preservation. As the sun climbs higher, casting a golden hue over the Parthenon in the distance, you prepare to step into the flow of the polis. But what secrets does the marketplace hold today, and how might they shape the evening's feast? The simple breakfast, humble grains, and the start of sustenance. You sit in the courtyard of your modest Athenian home, the morning sun now warming the stone bench beneath you. The air carries the faint scent of olive wood smoke, mingling with the earthy aroma of barley being ground nearby. It's around 450 BCE, and the day's rhythm is settling in, a quiet pulse of routine that defines life in the polis. Your breakfast, like most meals in this era, is unassuming, a reflection of the land's bounty and its limits. Yet, in its simplicity lies a story of survival, resourcefulness, and the subtle artistry of ancient Greek daily life. As you break a piece of barley bread, its coarse texture scratches against your fingers, and you begin to eat, slowly, deliberately, letting the flavors anchor you to the moment. The bread, known as maza, is the cornerstone of your diet. It's made from barley rather than wheat, which is costlier and reserved for wealthier households or special occasions. The grains were harvested months ago in the heat of summer, from fields tilled by oxen or slaves under the relentless Attic sun. You picture the farmer's calloused hands gripping wooden plows, sweat mingling with dust as they worked the rocky soil, coaxing it to yield enough to sustain the city. The barley was threshed on stone floors, winnowed in the breeze to separate grain from chaff, and stored in woven baskets or clay jars sealed with wax to keep pests at bay. Now it's ground fresh each day. The cornstones low grind a familiar sound, like a heartbeat of the household. You dip the maza into a small clay bowl of olive oil, its golden green hue catching the light. The oil, pressed from olives grown on terraced hillsides, is slightly peppery, a product of the region's dry climate. Sometimes you might drizzle honey over the bread, its sweetness a rare luxury from beehives tended in thyme-covered slopes near Mount Hymettus. The honey's floral notes linger on your tongue, a reminder of the bees' ceaseless labor, their hum a constant in the countryside. If the season permits, you might nibble on a handful of dried figs, their chewy texture and subtle sweetness a gift from last autumn's harvest, preserved in the cool shade of your storeroom. Two might appear on your table, made from goat's milk by shepherds in the hills. It's crumbly, sharp, sometimes flecked with herbs like wild oregano or thyme, gathered from rocky outcrops where goats graze. You break off a small piece, savoring its temps, knowing it was churned in wooden vats and pressed into molds by hands skilled in the quiet art of dairying. Occasionally, there are olives, small, briny ones, cured in seawater or vinegar, their pits littering the ground as you spit them out. These are not the lavish spreads of later banquets, but the humble fuel of a working day, eaten slowly as the city wakes around you. The act of eating is solitary or shared with family, depending on the hour and your status. If you're a man, you might eat alone or with your sons, while your wife oversees the household, ensuring the slaves or servants prepare enough for all. Women's roles are defined by the oikos, their labor invisible but essential, kneading dough, tending fires, or weaving wool that clothes you. If you're a woman, you might eat later, after the men. Your meal a quieter affair, perhaps in the women's quarters, where looms hum with the steady rhythm of warp and weft. Slaves, to eat simply leftover maza or porridge, their portion smaller, their labor unrelenting. The tools of breakfast are basic: a clay plate chipped from years of use, a knife to cut the bread, your hands still rough from yesterday's work. No forks or spoons clutter the table, fingers suffice, wiped clean on a scrap of cloth or your kitten. The meal is accompanied by water or, for some, a sip of diluted wine, a practice so common it's almost ritual. The wine, stored in amphorae, sealed with resin, is mixed with water in a small jug, its tartness softened to avoid the fog of intoxication so early in the day. You drink from a shallow kylix, its black glazed surface cool against your lips, the faint scent of clay mingling with the wine's fruity undertones. As you eat, the sounds of Athens grow louder. From the street, you hear the clatter of carts, the calls of vendors heading to the agora, and the laughter of children playing knucklebones with sheep bones in the dust. The polis is a living thing, its pulse felt in the daily routines that bind it. Your breakfast, though simple, is a microcosm of this world. Each bite connects you to the farmers, shepherds, and traders whose labor sustains the city. The barley comes from fields beyond the walls, the olives from groves tended for generations, the cheese from herds grazing under the same sky that arches over the Parthenon. Yet there's a rhythm to this simplicity, a cadence that soothes. The act of chewing maza, of tasting the oil's bite or the fig's sweetness, is meditative, grounding you in the present while tying you to centuries of tradition. You think of the myths told by fire-light Demeter gifting grain to humanity, or Athena's olive tree blessing the city. These stories, half believed, give meaning to the mundane, making each bite a quiet act of reverence. But the meal is brief, and the day calls. You rise, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and step. The agora awaits, where you'll barter for provisions or meet fellow citizens under the stoa's shade. The breakfast has fueled you, but it's also a reminder of scarcity droughts that wither crops, storms that sink fishing boats, or pests that raid stores. Survival here is a delicate balance, a dance with nature's whims. As you prepare to leave, you glance at the amphorae lining the wall, their contents dwindling as winter looms. What will the market hold today, and how will its offerings shape the evening's symposium? Market wanderings, gathering provisions amid the agora's murmurs. You step out from the shadowed doorway of your Athenian home. The morning sun, now climbing higher, casting a golden glow across the uneven stones of the street. It's around 450 BCE, and the polis is stirring fully to life, its pulse quickening as you make your way toward the agora, the bustling heart of Athens. Your breakfast of barley, maza, and olive oil lingers in your memory, its simplicity a quiet fuel for the day ahead. Now, your task is to gather provisions, perhaps for tonight's symposium, or to replenish the household stores. The air is warm, carrying the mingled scents of dust, herbs, and the faint saltiness of the sea as you navigate the winding paths toward the marketplace. The streets are narrow, flanked by whitewashed houses of sun-dried brick, their flat roofs occasionally dotted with drying figs or laundry fluttering in the breeze. You pass neighbors exchanging brief nods, weavers carrying baskets of wool, or slaves balancing amphorae on their shoulders. The sounds of the polis surround you, the rhythmic clop of donkey hooves, the creak of wooden cartwheels, and the distant chant of a street vendor hawking honeyed cakes. Children dart past, laughing as they toss pebbles in a game of chance, their voices blending with the hum of a city alive with purpose. As you approach the agora, the energy shifts. The open square, framed by stoas and temples, buzzes with a quiet chaos. The agora is more than a market, it's the soul of Athens, where citizens barter, debate, and linger under the shade of plane trees. You step onto the packed earth, worn smooth by countless sandals, and take in the scene. Stalls of rough-hewn wood or stacked stone line the edges, their wares spilling over in a tapestry of colors and textures. There are baskets of barley and wheat, their grains glinting in the sunlight, clay jars of olive oil sealed with wax, and heaps of figs, some fresh, others dried to a leathery sweetness. You pause at a fishmonger's stall, where the briny temps of the sea rises from wooden trays. Mullet and sardines, caught at dawn off the Piraeus, gleam silver under the sun, their scales catching light like tiny mirrors. The fishmonger, a weathered man with hands scarred from nets, calls out prices in a monotone chant, his voice blending with others into a soothing drone. You consider buying a few fish for the evening, imagining them roasted over coals with a sprinkle of wild thyme. But fish are costly, preserved with salt, or smoked for those who can afford to stockpile. And you weigh the cost against the barley stores at home, moving on. You pass a woman selling garlic and onions, their pungent aroma sharp in the warm air. She sits cross-legged, her hands deftly sorting bulbs, her face lined from years under the sun. Garlic, believed to ward off illness, is a staple, often mashed into pastes or boiled with lentils. You exchange a few words, perhaps bartering a handful of olives from your own stores for a string of onions, their papery skins rustling as you tuck them into a woven basket slung over your arm. Barter is common. Here, coinage exists, silver drachmae stamped with Athena's owl. But many transactions rely on goods swapped in trust. The agora's sounds are a gentle cacophony, the clink of pottery being stacked, the bleat of goats tethered at the edges, the low murmur of philosophers debating in the shade of a stoa. You catch snippets of conversation talk, of the latest assembly vote, rumors of Persian ships sighted near Ionia, or complaints about a drought threatening the olive harvest. Socrates might be nearby, his bare feet dusty, questioning a young man about virtue, his voice calm but relentless. You don't linger. Your focus is on the practical, the daily needs that ground your life. At another stall, you find a potter displaying kylixes and craters, their black glazed surfaces painted with scenes of gods or warriors. These are the vessels of the symposium, where wine will flow tonight, diluted with water in precise ratios. You run your fingers over a kylix, its smooth curve familiar, imagining it filled with wine as you recline among friends. The potter, a man with clay-caked hands, explains his firing technique, how the kill's heat transforms wet clay into enduring art. You nod, appreciating the craft, but move on, your basket growing heavier with provisions. Herbs catch your eye, next bundles of oregano, thyme, and dill, tied with twine and laid out on a cloth. Their scent is sharp, earthy, a reminder of the hills where they were gathered. You purchase a small bundle, knowing they'll season tonight's meal, perhaps a lentil stew or a roasted fish if you splurge. The vendor, a woman from the countryside, shares a quiet tip. Crush the thyme with mortar and pestle to release its flavor. Her voice is soft, her words blending into the agora's hum, a sound as lulling as waves on a shore. As you wander, you notice the diversity of the crowd. There are citizens like you, draped in khitans, but also medics, foreign residents selling dyes or spices from distant lands. Slaves move through the throng, carrying heavy loads for their masters, their faces expressionless but their steps steady. Women, mostly of lower status or slaves, tend stalls or fetch water, their hydria balanced with practiced grace. The agora is a microcosm of Athens, where every class and trade intersects, bound by the shared need to survive and thrive. You pause under a plane tree, its broad leaves offering shade, and sip water from a small clay flask. The agora's energy is vibrant, yet strangely calming, its rhythms predictable despite the bustle. You think of the symposium awaiting you tonight, where the provisions you gather now will transform into shared plates of food and wine. The weird habits of those banquets, sklining on couches, eating with fingers, mixing wine in a crater are rooted here in the goods you select and the hands that produce them. Each purchase ties you to the land, the sea, and the people who labor under the same sky. The sun is nearing its zenith, and the agora grows warmer, dust rising from the ground. You've gathered enough for Nunion's herbs, perhaps a small fish or two, but the day's work isn't done. The provisions must be carried home, prepared and stored, all while the polis hums around you. As you turn toward home, the weight of the basket grounding your steps, you wonder what conversations will the symposium bring tonight, and how will the agora's bounty shape the stories shared over wine. Midday repast, quiet meals. In the shadow of the Acropolis you return to your Athenian home, the weight of your basket pulling gently at your shoulder, filled with the agora's bounty onions, a bundle of thyme, perhaps a few silvery mullet wrapped in fig leaves to keep fresh. The sun is high now, around midday in 450 BCE, bathing Athens in a warm golden light that glints off the distant Acropolis, its marble columns shimmering like a mirage. The streets are quieter as you walk, the morning bustle of the agora giving way to a lull, as citizens and slaves alike retreat to the shade of their homes. Your sandals scuff against the worn stones, kicking up small clouds of dust, and the air carries the faint scent of baking bread and roasting herbs from nearby hearths inside your courtyard. The heat is softened by the shade of a lone fig tree, its leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. You set your basket on a low stone table, its surface pitted from years of use, and take a moment to breathe. The polis hums softly outside, distant voices, the creak of a cart, the occasional bleat of a goat butt here. In this small sanctuary, time feels slower, almost still. The midday meal, known as Ariston, awaits. A modest repast that bridges the simplicity of breakfast and the communal indulgence of the evening symposium. You settle onto a wooden stool, its legs uneven but familiar, and begin to prepare. The meal is humble, much like your morning maza, but with a touch more variety, thanks to your market finds. You unwrap a loaf of barley bread, its crust cracked from the clay oven's heat, and break it with your hands, the coarse grains crumbling slightly. The bread is paired with a small bowl of lentils, cooked earlier over the hearth by a slave or a member of your household. The lentils are soft, earthy, flavored with a pinch of the thyme you bought, their warmth releasing a faint steam that smells of the hills beyond Athens. You scoop them with a piece of bread, the combination filling but unpretentious, a staple for citizens who toil in fields, workshops, or the assembly. Beside the lentils, you place a few olives, their briny tang a sharp contrast to the lentils' mildness. These were cured in seawater, stored in clay jars that line your storeroom, their dark surfaces glistening with a thin sheen of oil. If you splurged at the agora, a small piece of fish might join the meal, perhaps one of the mullet, its flesh tender from roasting over coals, sprinkled with salt and a few crushed herbs. You eat with your fingers, tearing the fish into small bites, its smoky flavor mingling with the sea's saltiness, a reminder of the fishermen who rose before dawn to cast their nets, its black glaze worn but smooth under your touch. Sometimes Ariston includes a sip of diluted wine, but today you opt for water, its coolness soothing after the walk from the agora. The meal is eaten slowly, deliberately, as you sit in the courtyard's shade, the fig tree's leaves casting dappled patterns on the ground. If you're a man, you might eat alone or with male kin, the women of the household dining separately in their quarters, their voices a soft murmur as they spin wool or grind grain. If you're a woman, your meal might come later, after tending to the oikos, your hands still smelling of dough or olive oil from morning tasks. The act of eating is quiet, almost meditative. The flavors are simple but vivid: the lentils' earthiness, the olives' bite, the bread's nutty chew. Each bite ties you to the land, the barley from fields plowed by oxen, the olives from groves tended by calloused hands, the fish from waters navigated by weathered boats. You think of the farmers who wrestled with rocky soil, or the women who gathered herbs under the sun, their lives woven into every morsel. This meal, though plain, is a testament to their resilience, to the delicate balance of a city sustained by its hinterlands and seas dot around you. The household moves at its own rhythm. A slave might be sweeping the courtyard, the broom's bristles scratching against stone, or tending the small fire in the hearth where embers glow faintly. The air carries the scent of burning olive wood, mingling with the faint sweetness of drying figs strung above the doorway. If you have children, they might be nearby, playing with clay toys or learning to recite lines from Homer, their voices a soft counterpoint to the day's stillness. The polis feels distant now, its debates and dramas muted by the walls of your home. Yet, even in this quiet moment, your thoughts drift to the evening ahead. The symposium looms, a gathering where the agora's provisions will transform into a shared ritual of wine and conversation. The fish, if not eaten now, might appear on a communal plate. The thyme and onions will season a dish, their aromas filling the andron, the men's dining room where you'll recline on couches, sipping from the same calyx now in your hand. The contrast between this solitary Ariston and the symposium's sociability is stark, yet both are bound by the same ingredients, the same labor, the same earth. As you finish your meal, wiping your hands on your chiton, you glance at the sky. The sun is past its peak, the shadows lengthening slightly. The day's work continues, perhaps a visit to the fields, a meeting in the agora, or preparations for tonight's gathering. You rise, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and move toward the storeroom to check the amphory of wine and oil. The symposium requires careful planning, the right mix of water and wine, the right foods to spark conversation. But as you step into the cool shade of the storeroom, a question lingers. What choices will you make to ensure the evening unfolds smoothly? And what hidden tensions might arise among the guests? Preparations for the evening setting the stage for the symposium. You stand in the cool dimness of your Athenian home's storeroom. The midday heat fading as the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon. It's around 450 BCE, and the quiet of your Ariston meal lingers in your mind, its simple flavors grounding you in the rhythm of the day. The polis hums softly beyond the walls, but here, in the heart of your oikos, your focus shifts to the evening ahead, the symposium, a gathering of friends and citizens where wine, food, and ideas will flow. The preparations, though mundane, are deliberate, each step a ritual that transforms your modest home into a stage for the night's peculiar customs. You move with purpose, the air thick with the scent of olive oil and stored grain, as you begin to ready the andron, the men's dining room, for the feast. The andron is a small, rectangular room off the courtyard, its walls plastered and painted with simple geometric patterns or faded scenes of mythical feasts. You inspect the space, ensuring it's swept clean, the packed earth floor smooth underfoot. The room's centerpiece is a set of low wooden couches, or cleani, arranged in a U-shape around the walls, each draped with woven woolen cushions stuffed with straw or wool. You adjust them slightly, ensuring they're evenly spaced, their surfaces inviting for the guests who will soon recline. The cleni are not for sitting upright, but for lounging, a strange custom that sets the symposium apart, encouraging ease and conversation. As the night deepens, you call to a slave, perhaps a young man from Thrace or a woman acquired through trade, to bring the provisions from the storeroom. The basket from your agora visit sits nearby, its contentinians, thyme, perhaps a few mullet waiting to be transformed. You direct the preparation of simple dishes. The fish will be roasted over the hearth, their scales scraped off with a bronze knife, their flesh rubbed with olive oil and sprinkled with the thyme you bought. Lentils or broad beans might be simmered in a clay pot, their earthy aroma mingling with crushed garlic and a splash of vinegar. Olives, always present, will be piled into shallow bowls, their briny tang a familiar companion to the wine. The wine is the symposium's soul, and its preparation is a careful art. You select an amphora from the storeroom, its clay surface cool and slightly damp, sealed with a wax stopper. The wine inside, likely from the vineyards of Attica or traded from islands like Chios, is robust, its flavor tinged with resin from the pine used to seal the jars. You carry it to the andron, where a large cratera, wide-mouthed mixing bowl awaits. The crater is the evening's centerpiece, its black glazed surface painted with scenes of Dionysus or dancing satyrs, a nod to the god who presides over wine's pleasures. You pour the wine carefully, knowing it must be diluted with water, a ratio of 1 part wine to 2 or 3 parts water, to temper its strength and prolong the evening. You fetch water from the courtyard's its contents drawn from the public fountain, and mix it in the crater with a long wooden ladle. The act is precise, almost ceremonial, as you stir the liquid, watching it swirl into a deep ruby hue. Too much wine, and the guests might descend into chaos. Too little, and the mood will falter. You taste a small sip from a kylix, ensuring the balance is right, fruity, slightly tart, with a faint bitterness from the resin. Satisfied, you set out smaller cups, some clay, others painted with delicate patterns, ready for the guests to drink from as they recline. The food, though simple compared to modern feasts, has its own oddities. You consider adding a dish of thrushes, small birds caught in nets, roasted whole with their bones crunched for flavor, or perhaps eels from the rivers, their slippery flesh grilled until crisp. These are delicacies, costly and reserved for special occasions. But even simpler fare, like figs stuffed with cheese or flatbreads drizzled with honey, carries a strange allure, their textures and flavors unfamiliar to outsiders. You arrange the dishes on low tables beside the clenai, ensuring each guest can reach them easily, their fingers dipping into communal bowls as the night unfolds. The room needs ambience. So you instruct a slave to light oil lamps, their wicks made of twisted flax floating in shallow clay vessels. The lamps cast a soft, flickering glow, their smoke curling upward with a faint olive scent. You scatter cushions on the floor for added comfort, and perhaps a sprig of myrtle or laurel sacred to Apollo and Dionysus placed near the crater as a subtle offering. Music will come later, perhaps from a hired flute girl or a guest skilled with the lyre. But for now, the silence of preparation is soothing, broken only by the crackle of the hearth and the distant hum of the polis. You pause to consider the guest list. The symposium is a male affair, though hetera courtesans skilled in conversation and music might join later, adding wit to the evening. You've invited citizens like yourself, perhaps a merchant, a poet, or a minor politician, each bringing their own perspectives. The symposium is a place of equals, at least in theory, where status blurs under the influence of wine. But tensions linger, rivalries over trade, debates over the Peloponnesian tensions with Sparta, or simply the clash of egos. You arrange the clenni to avoid placing foes too close, a small act of diplomacy. As the sun dips lower, painting the sky with streaks of orange, you step outside briefly, feeling the cooling air against your skin. The courtyard is quiet, save for the rustle of the fig tree and the faint clatter of pots from the kitchen. The symposium feels close now, its rituals both familiar and strange, reclining, sharing wine, eating with fingers, debating under the flicker of lamps. You return to the Andron, checking the crater once more, its surface reflecting the lamplight. Everything is ready, but as the guests' arrival nears, a question stirs. Who will steer the night's conversation, and what unexpected ideas might emerge in the haze of wine? The arrival of guests, etiquette, and the flow of wine. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the Athenian evening settles over your home like a soft veil. It's around 450 BCE, and the Andron, your men's dining room, glows faintly with the flicker of oil lamps, their olive-scented smoke curling toward the ceiling. The clenilo couches, draped with woolen cushions, are neatly arranged. The crater, filled with diluted wine, its ruby surface shimmering in the lamplight. The air carries the aroma of roasted mullet and simmering lentils from the hearth, mingling with the faint sweetness of myrtle sprigs placed as offerings near the mixing bowl. You stand at the threshold of your courtyard, the cool night air brushing against your cheek. As the first sounds of approaching guests drift through the quiet streets of Athens, the polis is hushed now, its daytime clamor replaced by the distant bark of a dog and the soft chirp of crickets in the olive groves. You hear the shuffle of sandals on the stone path, the low murmur of voices, and the occasional laugh, familiar tones of friends and fellow citizens invited to tonight's symposium. The symposium is more than a meal. It's a ritual of connection, where men gather to share wine, food, and ideas in the intimacy of your home. Yet, it's governed by unspoken rules, a delicate etiquette that ensures harmony. Even as the wine loosens tongues and tempers, you greet, perhaps Callias, a merchant whose ships bring pottery from Corinth. He wears a finely woven chiton, its hem slightly dusty from the walk, and carries a small amphora of his own wine as a gesture of goodwill. You clasp his forearm, a customary greeting, and lead him into the andron, where he surveys the Cleani with a nod of approval. "A fine setup," he says, his voice calm but warm as he reclines on a couch, propping himself on one elbow in the symposium's peculiar posture. You offer him a kylix of water to cleanse his hands, a small ritual of hospitality. Its coolness drawn from the courtyard's amphora. More guests arrive. Lysander, a poet known for his verses about the sea, his beard flecked with gray, and Theron, a younger man who serves in the assembly, his eyes sharp with ambition. Each is welcomed with the same quiet formality, their sandals left at the door to keep the andron clean. A slave, moving silently, takes their cloaks, folding them neatly in a corner. The room fills with the soft rustle of tunics and the creak of wooden clinny as the men settle, their bodies angled to face one another, fostering the evening's communal spirit. You notice their glances at the crater, its painted scenes of Dionysus, a silent promise of the wine to come. Etiquette governs these early moments. You, as the host, are the symposiarch, the master of the feast, tasked with setting the tone. You signal a slave to pour the first cups of wine, drawn from the crater with a long ladle. The wine, diluted to a gentle strength, is poured into each guest's calyx, its black glazed surface cool against their fingers. Before drinking, you pour a small libation onto the flora, few drops for Dionysus, murmured thanks for the vine's gift. The guests follow, their voices low, the act grounding the evening in reverence. The wine's aroma is fruity, tinged with resin, its taste softened by the water's clarity. The room settles into a rhythm, the lamplight casting soft shadows across the painted walls. You offer the first dish halves and flatbreads, simple but satisfying, their surfaces glistening with olive oil. The men eat with their fingers, tearing bread and scooping olives from shared bowls, their movements unhurried. Conversation begins gently. Callias speaks of a storm that delayed his ships, his voice steady, almost soothing, as he describes the waves crashing against the Piraeus. Lysander counters with a line from a poem, likening the sea to a restless god, his words lilting like a lullaby. Yet, beneath the calm, there's an undercurrent of expectation. The symposium is a space of equality, but status and rivalries linger. Theron, the ambitious assemblyman, shifts slightly on his couch, his eyes darting to you, perhaps eager to steer the talk toward politics. You, as symposiarch, must balance the mood, ensuring no single voice dominates. You propose a toast, raising your kylix to friendship and wisdom, a neutral topic that draws murmurs of agreement. The wine flows again, its gentle warmth loosening limbs, though the dilution keeps minds clear for now. A flute girl enters, her presence another layer of the symposium's etiquette. She's a hired entertainer, her tunic simpler than a citizen's, her hair bound with a linen band. She carries a double flute, its reeds polished smooth, and begins to play a soft, repetitive melody that weaves through the room like a thread. The notes are calming, their cadence matching the flicker of the lamps, and the guests nod in approval. Her role is not just musical. Later, she might join in banter or serve wine, a reminder of the symposium's blend of formality and ease. You notice the small details, the way Callias wipes his fingers on his chiton after eating an olive, the faint clink of a kylix set down too quickly, the scent of thyme from the roasted fish waiting in the kitchen. These are the textures of the evening, mundane yet vivid, grounding the gathering in the everyday. The symposium's weird habits, reclining, sharing bowls, diluting wine are unfolding naturally, their strangeness invisible to those who live them. But you sense the night is young, and the wine has only begun to flow as the flute girl's melody fades. You signal for the next course, perhaps the roasted mullet or a dish of figs stuffed with cheese. The men lean forward, their voices growing slightly louder, the wine warming their thoughts. You wonder what topics will emerge as the crater empties, and will the etiquette hold as the night deepens. Reclining in comfort, the peculiar postures of dining the andron of your Athenian home hums with the quiet energy of the symposium. The air warm with the glow of oil lamps and the scent of roasted mullet wafting from the low tables. It's around 450 BCE, and the evening has settled into a gentle rhythm. The guest, Scalius, the merchant, Lysander, the poet, Theron, the assemblyman, and others reclining on their clenni, the cushioned couches that define this peculiar gathering. You, as the symposiarch, lean back on your own cline, propped on one elbow, a kylix of diluted wine resting lightly in your hand. The flute girl's melody lingers in the background, its soft notes blending with the murmur of conversation, creating a soothing backdrop as you observe the strange yet familiar posture of your guests. Reclining is the heart of the symposium's oddity, a custom that sets it apart from the upright meals of the day. You feel the woolen cushions beneath you, their texture slightly coarse, stuffed with straw or wool to soften the wooden frame of the cline. The couch is low, barely a foot off the ground, its legs carved with simple patterns, perhaps a nod to the olive wood from which it's made. You adjust your position, your chiton draped loosely, one leg bent, the other stretched out as you balance the kylix on your thigh. This posture, so natural to you, would seem strange to an outsider eating and drinking while lying down. Head tilted slightly to sip from a shallow cup, body angled to face your companions. The clenni are arranged in a U-shape around the andron, fostering intimacy and conversation. Each guest mirrors your posture, their bodies relaxed but alert, their elbows propped on cushions to keep their torsos raised. Callias, to your left, lounges with practiced ease, his fingers idly tracing the rim of his kylix as he speaks of trade routes to Rhodes. Lysander, across the room, reclines with a poet's grace, his eyes half closed as he hums a fragment of verse, the wine loosening his thoughts. Theron, younger and less accustomed, shifts occasionally, adjusting his weight to find comfort, his ambition evident even in his posture. The act of reclining is more than comfort, it's a symbol of status and leisure. Only free men, citizens of the polis, recline at symposia, Slaves stand or kneel to serve, and women, if present, are limited to entertainers, like the flute girl, who now moves silently to refill the calyx from the crater. The posture equalizes the guests, at least in theory, creating a space where hierarchy blurs under the shared act of lounging and drinking. Yet, you notice subtle differences. Callias's cushions are slightly thicker, a quiet boast of his wealth, while Theron's nervous adjustments betray his eagerness to impress. You signal for the next dish, and a slave places a clay platter of roasted mullet on the low table between the clenny. The fish, rubbed with thyme and olive oil, glisten in the lamplight, their smoky aroma mingling with the wine's resinous temps. The guests reach forward, their movements languid, tearing small pieces with their fingers. No forks or spoons clutter the table, just hands, sticky with oil, wiping occasionally on a scrap of cloth or the edge of a You take a piece of fish, its flesh tender, the thyme sharp on your tongue, and chew slowly, savoring the moment's simplicity. The reclining posture shapes the meal's pace. Eating while lying down forces deliberation. Each bite is small, each sip careful to avoid spilling wine on your tunic. You notice Lysander dipping a piece of flatbread into a bowl of crushed garlic and oil, his movements unhurried, as if the act itself is a meditation. The calyx, designed for reclining, is shallow and wide, its two handles allowing a firm grip as you tilt it to drink. The wine, diluted to a gentle warmth, slides smoothly, its fruity note softened by the water's clarity. Conversation flows as naturally as the wine, guided by the reclining ease. Callias recounts a tale of a shipwrecked cargo of amphorae, his voice low and rhythmic, almost lulling. Lysander responds with a metaphor, comparing the sea to a lover's fickle heart, drawing soft chuckles. Theron, eager to assert himself, mentions the assembly's recent vote on fortifications, his tone sharper, testing the room's mood. You, as symposiarch, steer the talk gently, proposing a question about the god's role in mortal affairs, a safe topic to keep the peace. The reclining posture helps, its informality softening egos, encouraging reflection over argument. The flute girl resumes her playing, her double flute weaving a melody that rises and falls like a gentle tide. The sound is hypnotic, blending with the crackle of the lamps and the rustle of cushions as guests shift. You notice the small details, the faint sheen of oil on Theron's fingers, the way Callias's calyx tilts precariously as he gestures, the scent of myrtle from the sprigs near the crater. These are the textures of the symposium, mundane yet vivid, grounding the night in the ordinary rhythms of Athenian life. Yet, the reclining posture, so central to the evening, carries its own challenges. A guest might grow too comfortable, slurring words as the wine takes hold, or too restless, disrupting the harmony. You watch Theron closely, his youth making him prone to excess. The crater is still half full, its contents promising hours of talk, but the night's balance hinges on restraint. As you sip your wine, the lamplight casting shadows across the andron, you wonder, what flavors will the next course bring, and how will they shape the stories shared in this reclining circle? The first course, odd appetizers, and their hidden meanings. The symposium in your Athenian home unfolds gently, the andron bathed in the soft glow of oil lamps, their flickering light dancing across the painted walls. It's around 450 BCE, and you recline on your cline, the woolen cushions supporting your elbow as you hold a kylix of diluted wine, its cool clay smooth against your fingers. The guest Scalius, the merchant, Lysander, the poet, Theron, the assemblyman, and others lounge in similar postures, their voices a low hum, punctuated by the flute girl's melodic notes. The air is rich with the scents of roasted mullet, thyme, and the faint resin of the wine. But now the first course arrives, a collection of appetizers that seem ordinary yet carry the strange quirks of ancient Greek dining. You signal a slave, who moves silently to place a series of small clay dishes on the low tables between the clenai. The offerings are modest but deliberate, designed to spark conversation and complement the wine's flow. The first dish catches your eye, a pile of roasted thrushes, tiny birds no larger than your fist, their feathers plucked and skins crisped over the hearth. Their bones are delicate, meant to be crunched whole, a practice that might startle an outsider, but feels natural here. You take one, its warmth lingering from the fire, and bite carefully, the meat tender, with a faint gamey tempz, flavored by a rub of wild oregano. Next to the thrushes are bowls of olives, their dark surfaces glistening with brine, cured in seawater and stored in amphorae to preserve their bite. You pop one into your mouth, the saltiness sharp on your tongue, its pit small enough to spit discreetly onto the floor, where it joins others in a scattered pattern. There's also a plate of figs, split open and stuffed with soft goat's cheese, their sweetness melding with the cheese's sharp creaminess. The combination is odd yet harmonious, a balance of textures that invites slow chewing. Each bite a moment of reflection amid the reclining ease. The strangest offering, perhaps, is a dish of boiled octopus, its tentacles sliced into small rounds, their surfaces slightly chewy, glistening with olive oil and sprinkled with dill. Octopus is a delicacy, fished from the Aegean's depths, its preparation a labor of beating and boiling to soften its flesh. You take a piece, its flavor briny and rich, unlike anything terrestrial, and notice Theron's slight hesitation before he tries one, his youth betraying a lack of familiarity. Callias, the merchant, eats with gusto, recounting a tale of fishermen battling storms to haul such creatures from the sea. These appetizers are more than food. They carry meanings woven into the symposium's fabric. The thrushes, small and numerous, symbolize the polis's reliance on the land's small bounties, caught in nets by farmers supplementing their crops. The olives, ever present, are a nod to Athena's gift, their oil-fueling lamps and flavoring meals, a staple that binds every household. The figs with cheese reflect a blend of austerity and indulgence, their simplicity elevated by careful preparation. The octopus, rare and costly, signals your hospitality as host, a subtle boast of your ability to provide such fare. You watch the guests as they eat, their fingers dipping into communal bowls, a practice that fosters intimacy. The absence of utensils is unremarkable to you, but the act of sharing dishes, hands brushing, portions torn from the same loaf, creates a bond, a shared vulnerability. Lysander, the poet, dips a piece of flatbread into a bowl of crushed garlic and oil, his movements slow, almost ritualistic, as he murmurs about the muses inspiring his latest verse. Theron, still adjusting to the reclining posture, reaches awkwardly for an olive, nearly spilling his kylix, drawing a gentle laugh from the group. The wine flows steadily, poured from the crater by the slave, its diluted strength keeping the mood light but warm. You raise your kylix, proposing a toast to Demeter for the harvest's bounty, and the guests follow, their cups glinting in the lamplight. The libation another splash of wine on the floor grounds, the moment in tradition, the act as soothing as the flute girl's melody weaving through the air. Conversation drifts to the foods themselves. Callias speculates on the cost of octopus in Corinth, while Lysander spins a tale of Poseidon's creatures guarding the sea's secrets. The appetizers, though simple, are a prelude to the symposium's deeper rituals. Their oddity lies in their variety: land and sea, sweet and salty, crunchy and soft, each chosen to stimulate the senses without overwhelming. You notice the guests' reactions. Theron's cautious nibble at the octopus, Callias's relish for the thrush's bones, Lysander's savoring of the figs, as if each were a poem. The foods are a bridge to the night's heart, where wine and words will intertwine, but they also reflect the polis's rhythms, its dependence on trade, fishing and farming, its balance of scarcity and celebration. As the dishes empty, the slave clears them, stacking the clay plates with a soft clink. The crater is still half full, promising more rounds, and the guests' voices grow slightly louder, the wine loosening their thoughts. You feel the symposium's pulse quickening, the reclining posture and shared plates fostering a warmth that binds the room. But as the flute girl strikes a new tune and the lamps burn lower, you wonder, what will the mixing of the crater reveal? And how will the night's rituals deepen the bonds or tensions among these men? Mixing the crater, the ritual of wine and water. The symposium in your Athenian home hums with a quiet vitality. The Andron's air, thick with the scents of roasted thrushes, briny olives, and the faint resin of wine. It's around 450 BCE, and you recline on your kline. The woolen cushions soft beneath your elbow, a kylix resting lightly in your hand. The oil lamps cast a warm, flickering glow across the faces of your guests: Callias, the merchant, Lysander, the poet, and others, their postures relaxed yet attentive as they nibbled the last of the first course. The flute girl's melody weaves through the room, its notes soft and repetitive, like waves lapping at the shore. Now, as the dishes are cleared, your attention turns to the crater, the wide-mouthed mixing bowl at the center of the anvil, where the evening's true ritual begins, the mixing of wine and water. You rise slightly, adjusting your kitten, and nod to a slave, who steps forward with a clay jug of water and a smaller amphora of wine. The crater, its black-glazed surface painted with scenes of Dionysus reclining among vines, stands as the symposium's heart, a vessel that transforms raw wine into a communal bond. You, as symposiarch, oversee this act, a task both practical and symbolic, ensuring the wine's strength suits the night's mood. The guests watch, their conversation pausing. As you begin the ritual, the room's focus narrowing to the crater's gleaming curve. You pour the wine first, its deep red stream catching the lamplight as it flows from the amphora. The wine, likely from Attica's vineyards or traded from Lesbos, carries a fruity tempus, its surface shimmering with a faint oily sheen from the resin used to seal its storage jars. The scent rises, sharp and slightly bitter, filling the andron with the promise of Dionysus's gift. You stop after filling the crater a third of the way, careful not to overwhelm the mix. Then comes the water, drawn from the courtyard's its cool clarity splashing gently as you pour it in a steady stream. The ratio is deliberate, 2 parts water to 1 part wine, a balance that tempers the wine's potency, ensuring clarity of mind as the night unfolds. You stir the mixture with a long wooden ladle, the liquid swirling into a uniform ruby hue, its surface rippling like a quiet sea. The act is meditative, the soft scrape of the ladle against clay blending with the flute girl's tune. You taste a small sip, dipping your kylix into the crater, and nod in approval. The wine's bite is softened, its flavors rounded, a gentle warmth that invites lingering conversation rather than drunken excess. The guests murmur their agreement, their eyes following the crater as if it holds the night's secrets. This mixing is no mere practicality, it's a ritual steeped in meaning. Wine, undiluted, is the drink of barbarians, a path to chaos that the Greeks scorn. By blending it with water, you honor Dionysus while embracing moderation, a civic virtue that mirrors the polis's ideals of balance and order. You pour a small libation onto the floor, a few drops for the god, the act grounding the symposium in reverence. The guests follow, each tipping their kylix to spill a splash, their voices low as they murmur thanks. The sound a soothing hum in the lamplit room. The slave begins to serve, dipping a ladle into the crater to fill each guest's kylix. The cups, some plain clay, others painted with delicate figures, pass from hand to hand, their shallow bowls designed for reclining. You watch Callias sip slowly, his merchant's pragmatism softened by the wine's warmth, while Lysander cradles his kylix as if it were a muse, his poet's eyes distant. Theron, the young assemblyman, drinks a touch too quickly, his ambition betraying a desire to keep pace with the older men. You note this, ready to guide the night's rhythm if his enthusiasm tips toward excess. Conversation resumes, the wine loosening tongues. Callias speaks of a new trade deal with Miletus, his voice steady but warm, the wine lending his words a gentle cadence. Lysander responds with a story of Dionysus's wanderings, his tone lilting, almost hypnotic, as he describes the god teaching mortals the vine's secrets. Theron, emboldened, ventures a comment on the assembly's debates over tribute from allied cities, his voice sharp but tempered by the crater's calming influence. You steer the talk lightly, asking about the harvest festivals, a neutral topic that draws nods and soft laughter. The crater's ritual is a thread that binds the symposium, its mixing a metaphor for the blending of minds. The wine, though diluted, carries a subtle power, loosening inhibitions while preserving clarity. You notice the small details, the way the crater's surface reflects the lamplight, the faint drip of wine from a guest's kylix onto the floor, the scent of myrtle sprigs placed nearby as an offering. These are the textures of the evening, mundane yet vivid, grounding the gathering in the polis's rhythms. As the crater empties, you signal for a second mixing, another amphora of wine and jug of water brought forth. The ritual repeats, its repetition soothing, like the cycles of planting and harvest that sustain Athens. The flute girl's melody shifts to a slower tune, its notes curling around the room like smoke, and the guests settle deeper into their clenny. But as the wine flows and the night deepens, you wonder, what stories will the crater's second pouring unleash, and will the balance of the evening hold? Toasts and tales, conversations that wandered through the night, the andron of your Athenian home glows softly, the oil lamps casting a warm, flickering light across the reclining guests, their clini creaking faintly as they shift on woolen cushions. It's around 450 BCE, and the symposium has settled into a deeper rhythm. The crater's second mixing of wine and water filling the air with a faint, resinous temps. You, as symposiarch, lean back on your cline, a kylix of diluted wine balanced in your hand, its shallow bowl cool against your fingers. The flute girl's melody weaves through the room, a gentle, repetitive hum that blends with the murmur of voices: Callias the merchant, Lysander the poet, Theron the assemblyman, and others, each warmed by the wine's subtle glow. The first course of thrushes and figs is gone, and now the night turns to toasts and tales, where words become the feast. You raise your kylix, the lamplight catching its black glazed rim, and propose a toast, your voice calm but deliberate, to Athena, guardian of our polis, and to the bonds that hold us here. The guests echo the sentiment, their cups tilting. In unison, a few drops of wine splashing onto the floor as a libation. The act is familiar, a ritual that punctuates the symposium, grounding the night in reverence while loosening the tongue. The wine, diluted to a gentle strength, warms without clouding the mind, its fruity notes mingling with the faint bitterness of resin, a flavor as comforting as the crackle of the hearth. Callias, reclining to your left, seizes the moment to speak. His voice, weathered by years of bartering across the Aegean, carries a steady cadence as he tells of a journey to Crete, where he traded Athenian olive oil for saffron, its threads more precious than gold. The tale is mundane yet vivid, the creak of his ship's timbers, the salt spray on his face, the haggling in a sun-baked marketplace. You notice the guests lean slightly toward him, their eyes half closed, lulled by the story's rhythm and the wine's warmth. The symposium thrives on such tales, where ordinary lives, merchants, farmers, poets become threads in the polis's tapestry. Lysander, the poet, follows, his kylix cradled like a muse. He spins a story not of trade, but of myth, his voice soft and melodic, almost a chant. He speaks of Orpheus, whose lyre tamed beasts and softened Hades' heart, drawing parallels to the flute girl's music binding the room. His words are deliberate, each phrase crafted to linger, and you feel the andron's atmosphere shift, the tale weaving a spell as soothing as the flickering lamps. The guests sip their wine, their reclining postures easing further, the clini's cushions creaking softly under their weight. Theron, the young assemblyman, grows restless, his ambition flickering like the lamps. He interrupts with a toast of his own, raising his kylix a touch too quickly to the demos, the strength of Athens. His voice is sharp, eager to steer the talk toward politics, perhaps to impress or provoke. The room pauses, the flute girl's melody faltering for a moment. You, as symposiarch, sense the shift, the potential for discord. You nod, raising your cup to acknowledge his toast, but gently redirect, and to the wisdom that guides the demos, let us hear a tale of such wisdom. The move is subtle, preserving harmony, and the guests relax, their kylixes tilting once more. The tales wander now, each guest offering a fragment of their world. One speaks of a farmer who outwitted a drought by digging a hidden cistern, his ingenuity a quiet heroism. Another recalls a festival where dancers honored Demeter, their feet stirring dust under torchlight. The stories are not grand epics, but snapshots of Athenian life planting, trading, worshipping woven with the mundane details that ground the polis. You notice the textures of the moment, the faint clink of a kylix set on a table, the scent of myrtle sprigs near the crater, the way Theron's fingers fidget with an olive pit, betraying his youth. The flute girl resumes her playing, her double, flute's notes curling through the air, a counterpoint to the tales. Her presence, though silent, is part of the symposium's rhythm, her music a thread that ties the stories together. Occasionally, she refills a kylix from the crater, her movements graceful, her tunic brushing the floor. The wine flows steadily, its diluted strength keeping the mood light, though you watch Theron closely, noting his quicker sips, a sign he might push the night's boundaries. You propose another toast, this time to friendship, a safe harbor for the conversation. The guests raise their cups, their voices blending in a low murmur. The libations splash on the floor, a familiar sound. The tales grow quieter, more reflective. Lysander speaks of a night spent under the stars, composing verses by the Ilissus River, its waters whispering secrets. Callias counters with a memory of a quiet deal struck in a foreign port. The trust between strangers, a fragile but lasting bond. Even Theron softens, sharing a story of his father teaching him to carve a voting pebble, a small act of civic duty. That the symposium's magic lies in these moments, where wine and words blur the lines between men, their reclining postures fostering a shared vulnerability. The crater is nearly empty again, its contents fueling the night's warmth. You signal for another mixing, the ritual of wine and water, a steady anchor. But as the lamps burn lower, casting longer shadows, you wonder, what new flavors or debates will the next course bring, and how will the tales deepen as the crater refills? Exotic flavors, strange ingredients from distant lands, symposium in your Athenian home has woven its spell. The Andron aglow with the soft flicker of oil lamps, their olive-scented smoke curling toward the ceiling. It's around 450 BCE, and you recline on your klein, the woolen cushions cradling your elbow as you sip from a kylix of diluted wine, its fruity warmth tempered by water. The guests Callias, the merchant, Lysander, the poet, Theron, the assemblyman, and others lounge on their klenai, their voices a low murmur carried by the flute girl's gentle melody. The crater at the room's center, freshly refilled, gleams in the lamplight, its ruby contents fueling tales of trade and myth. Now, as the night deepens, a new course arrives, bringing with it exotic flavors, strange ingredients from distant lands that add an unexpected layer to the symposium's rhythm. You signal a slave, who moves silently to place a new set of clay dishes on the low tables between the klenai. The offerings are unlike the earlier thrushes and olives, their origins stretching beyond Attica's familiar hills to the edges of the known world. You lean forward, the creak of your klein barely audible, and survey the plates, small heaps of dried dates from Persia, their sticky sweetness a stark contrast to the briny olives, slivers of smoked eel from the rivers of Boeotia, their rich, oily flesh glistening. and a rare treat, tiny grains of black pepper, traded from lands far to the east, sprinkled lightly over a dish of roasted lentils. These are not the staples of your daily maza, but luxuries. Their presence, a quiet boast of your hospitality and the polis's far-reaching trade. You take a date, its wrinkled surface tacky against your fingers, and bite into it, the intense sweetness bursting on your tongue. A flavor foreign yet alluring. Dates, brought by merchants like Callias through dusty caravan routes from the Persian Empire, are a rarity in Athens, their cost rivaling that of fine wine. You chew slowly, savoring the contrast with the wine's tartness, and notice the guests' reactions. Callias, familiar with such imports, eats with a knowing smile, while Theron, the young assemblyman, hesitates, his fingers hovering over the unfamiliar fruit before taking one cautiously. Lysander, the poet, pops a date into his mouth and murmurs about the desert's gifts, his words weaving a poetic thread around the food. The smoked eel is next, its slices arranged in a spiral on a clay platter, their dark, glossy surfaces catching the lamplight. You tear off a small piece, its texture chewy, the flavor deep and earthy, with a faint smokiness from the oak fires used to cure it. Eels, fished from the muddy rivers of Boeotia, or even farther afield, are a delicacy, their preparation a labor of cleaning and smoking to preserve their richness. You notice Theron's eyes widen slightly as he tries a piece, the unfamiliar taste prompting a quick sip of wine to balance it. Callias, ever the merchant, launches into a tale of trading Athenian pottery for eel at a Boeotian market, his voice steady, almost lulling, as he describes the riverbank's mist. The lentils, sprinkled with black pepper, are the strangest of all. Pepper, a spice from distant India, is a luxury few can afford. Its tiny grains carried across seas and mountains by traders braving bandits and storms. You scoop a small portion with a piece of flatbread, the pepper's sharp, biting heat a shock after the lentils' mild earthiness. The flavor is exotic, a spark that cuts through the wine's warmth. And you see Lysander's eyebrows rise, his poet's mind already crafting a metaphor for this fiery speck from unknown lands. Theron, emboldened by the wine, takes a larger portion, coughing slightly at the pepper's bite, drawing soft laughter from the group. These exotic flavors carry stories of their own, each bite a link to the world beyond Athens. The dates speak of Persian markets, where traders haggle under palm trees, the eel of river folk who net their catch under starlight, the pepper of distant shores, its journey a saga of ships and caravans. You, as symposiarch, guide the conversation, asking Callias about his travels to the east. He speaks of ports in Ionia, where spices and fruits change hands, his voice a soothing drone that blends with the flute girl's melody. The tales are not grand, but grounded stories of bartering, of weathered hands exchanging goods, of the polis's reach stretching far beyond its walls. The act of eating these dishes is slow, deliberate, the reclining posture forcing care to avoid spills. You dip your fingers into a communal bowl, the shared act fostering intimacy, though the exotic ingredients add a layer of curiosity. The guest's fingers, sticky with date residue or oily from eel, wipe on their kittens, the gesture unremarkable yet unifying. The kylixes are refilled from the crater, the wine's gentle warmth balancing the pepper's heat. and you propose a toast to the traders who bring such wonders. The libations splash on the floor, a familiar ritual. The flute girl shifts her tune, the notes slower now, curling around the room like the smoke from the lamps. The exotic flavors spark new conversations. Lysander muses on whether the gods taste such rarities in their feasts on Olympus, while Theron, loosening under the wine's influence, speculates on taxing Eastern trade to fund the navy. You steer the talk gently, keeping it light, asking about the strangest foods each has encountered. The answers, pickled fish from Thrace, honeyed locusts from Egypt, draw laughter. The mood warm and convivial. As the dishes empty, the crater's level lowers, its contents fueling the night's ease. You notice the small details, the faint sheen of oil on Callias's fingers, the way Lysander cradles his kylix like a lyre, the pepper grains scattered on the table like tiny stars. The symposium feels alive, its exotic flavors a bridge to the wider world. But as the lamps burn lower, you wonder what games or diversions will follow, and how will they shape the night's unfolding harmony. Games and diversions, light-hearted oddities amid the feast. Andron of your Athenian home pulses with the gentle rhythm of the symposium, its air warm with the glow of oil lamps and the lingering sense of exotic dates, smoked eel, and pepper-dusted lentils. It's around 450 BCE, and you recline on your cline, the woolen cushions soft beneath your elbow, a kylix of diluted wine resting in your hand. The guest Scallius, the merchant, Lysander the poet, Theron the assemblyman, and others lounge on their clenai, their laughter mingling with the flute girl's soft melody, which curls through the room like a gentle breeze. The crater's ruby contents dwindle, its second mixing nearly spent, and the night, warmed by wine and strange flavors, now turns to games and diversions, light-hearted oddities that add a playful layer to the symposium's rituals. You, as symposiarch, sense the moment is ripe for a shift. The exotic dishes have sparked curiosity, and the wine has loosened tongues, creating a mood ripe for amusement. You propose a game, your voice calm but inviting. Let us test our wits with Cotobos to Dionysus and to Mer. The guests raise their kylixes, their cheers soft but enthusiastic, and a slave moves to set up the game, a peculiar pastime that defines the symposium's playful side. The Cotobos setup is simple. A small bronze stand, or plastings, is placed in the center of the andron, topped with a clay disc. Nearby, a shallow basin of water holds floating saucers, an alternative target for the game's second form. Kotobos is a test of dexterity and luck, a strange ritual where players flick the dregs of their wine from their kylixes at the targets. You demonstrate first, holding your kylix by its handles, tilting it to gather the last drops of wine, and with a flick of your wrist, sending a small arc of liquid toward the plastic. The wine misses, splashing onto the floor, but the guests laugh, the sound a soothing ripple in the lamplit room. Callias, ever competitive, takes his turn, his merchant's precision guiding the wine to graze the disc, which wobbles but doesn't fall. He grins, raising his kylix in mock triumph, and the room hums with approval. Lysander, the poet, plays next, his throw more theatrical than accurate, the wine arcing high and splattering into the basin, missing the saucers entirely. He laughs, reciting a quick verse about Dionysus's mischief, his words slurring slightly from the wine's warmth. Theron, eager to prove himself, flicks his wine with force, nearly toppling the plastics, and the guests clap, their reclining postures shifting as they lean forward to watch. The game is silly, yet captivating, its simplicity a counterpoint to the night's earlier tales of trade and myth. The wine's arcs catch the lamplight, fleeting streaks that vanish into the floor or basin, each miss or hit drawing soft cheers or groans. You notice the small details, the faint splatter of wine on the packed earth floor, joining the libations spilled earlier. The way Callias adjusts his chiton before throwing, as if aiming for a trade deal. The flute girl, pausing her melody to watch, her lips curling in a quiet smile. Cotobos is more than a game, it's a ritual of camaraderie, its absurdity leveling the guests, merchant and poet alike, into a shared moment of play. You propose a wager, keeping it light. The next successful hit dedicates the round to a guest's chosen deity. Theron, quick to respond, dedicates his throw to Athena, and when his wine clips the disc, he beams, the room's laughter washing over him. The diversions shift as the Cotobos stand is cleared. You suggest another game, Scolia, where each guest sings a short verse, passing a myrtle branch to the next to continue the song. Lysander begins, his voice soft and melodic, singing of the sea's embrace, passing the branch to Callias, who stumbles through a verse about ships and profit, his tone more practical than poetic. The branch reaches Theron, who sings of Athens's glory, his voice bold but slightly off-key, drawing chuckles. The Scolia weaves through the room, the guests' voices blending with the flute girl's resumed melody, creating a hypnotic cadence that lulls the mind. The games are light, but they carry the symposium's spirit-shared vulnerability, the wine's gentle haze softening egos. You refill the kylixes from the crater, the slave's ladle dipping into the dwindling mixture, its ruby surface reflecting the lamp's glow. The wine, still diluted, keeps the mood buoyant without tipping into chaos. Though you watch Theron closely, his throws in Cotobos growing bolder, his sips quicker. As symposiarch, you guide the pace, proposing a quieter diversion, riddles. You offer one about a ship that sails without wind, its answer a dream, and the guests ponder, their responses slow and thoughtful, the wine softening their wits. The andron feels alive, its air thick with the scents of wine, oil and myrtle, the lamps burning lower, casting longer shadows. The games, though trivial, bind the guests, their laughter, and misses a reminder of the polis's communal pulse. But as the crater nears empty and the night grows late, you wonder, what will the next pouring bring, and how will the deepening conversations test the symposium's harmony? The second, pouring, deepening discussions and lingering habits. The symposium in your Athenian home has settled into a deeper cadence, the andron's air heavy with the mingled scents of wine, olive oil, and the faint smoke of dying lamps. It's around 450 BCE, and you recline on your Klein, the woolen cushions worn but comforting beneath your elbow, a kylix of diluted wine cradled in your hand. The guest Scalius, the merchant, Lysander, the poet, Theron, the assemblyman, and others lounge on their clini, their laughter from the Cotobos game and Scolia songs fading into a quieter hum. The flute girl's melody, now slow and almost mournful, weaves through the room, its notes blending with the crackle of embers in the hearth. The crater at the center is nearly empty, its ruby contents dwindling, and you, as symposiarch, signal for the second pouring, a ritual that promises to deepen the night's discussions and test its lingering habits. You rise slightly, your kitten shifting against the cline, and nod to a slave, who brings a fresh amphora of wine and a jug of water. The crater, its black glazed surface etched with scenes of satyrs dancing, gleams faintly in the lamplight, a silent witness to the evening's unfolding. You pour the wine first, its deep, fruity aroma rising as it fills the bowl, the liquid catching the flickering light like a dark mirror. The wine, perhaps from the islands of Samos, carries a richer note than the earlier mix, its resinous Thames sharper from longer storage. You add water, 2 parts to 1, stirring slowly with a wooden ladle. The soft scrape of wood on clay, a soothing counterpoint to the flute girl's tune. The mixture swirls into a uniform hue, its balance critical to keeping the night's harmony. You taste a sip, dipping your calyx into the crater, and nod approval. The wine's warmth is stronger now, its flavors deepened by the new blend, yet still tempered to avoid excess. The slave refills the guests' calyxes, their shallow bowls passing from hand to hand. The act a quiet ritual that binds the room. Callias, the merchant, sips slowly, his eyes half closed, while Lysander, the poet, swirls his cup thoughtfully, as if the wine holds verses. Theron, the young assemblyman, drinks a touch too eagerly, his earlier boldness in kotabos carrying into his sips, and you make a mental note to watch him closely. The second pouring shifts the symposium's tone. The earlier games and Tale's light-hearted stories of trade and myth give way to weightier topics, the wine loosening tongues and deepening thoughts. You propose a question to steer the conversation, your voice calm but deliberate. What is the true measure of a polis's strength, its walls, its ships, or its people? The guests pause, their clini creaking as they shift, the flute girl's melody fading to let the words take center stage. Callias speaks first, his voice steady, arguing for ships, the lifeblood of trade that sustains Athens' wealth. He describes the docks at Piraeus, the creak of oars, the salt-stained ropes, his words painting a vivid yet lulling picture. Lysander counters, his poet's voice soft and rhythmic, claiming the people their stories. Their songs give the polis its soul. He speaks of festivals where citizens dance under torchlight, their voices raised to Apollo, his words weaving a hypnotic thread that draws nods from the group. Theron, emboldened by the wine, argues for walls, his tone sharp as he cites the growing tensions with Sparta, the need for fortifications to protect the demo. His voice rises slightly, a hint of passion breaking the symposium's calm, and you, as symposiarch, interject with a gentle question. But do walls not also divide us from allies? The redirection soothes the mood, and Theron softens, sipping his wine as he ponders. The conversation drifts, the wine fueling reflections on Athens' place in the world. The guests speak of the Delian League, the tribute from allied cities, the balance of power and trust. Callias shares a tale of negotiating with a Chion merchant, their agreement sealed over a shared calyx under a foreign sky. Lysander recalls a poet from Lesbos, whose verses spoke of unity, their rhythm echoing the sea's pulse. Even Theron, his ambition tempered by the crater's flow, admits the Demos's strength lies in its debates, however contentious. The words are not dramatic, but deliberate. Like the steady drip of water from a fountain, you notice the symposium's lingering habits, the way Callias wipes his fingers on his kitten after dipping into a bowl of olives, the faint clink of Lysander's kylix as he sets it down to gesture, the flute girl's silent refilling of cups, her tunic brushing the floor. These small, acceding, drinking, reclining are the night's heartbeat, grounding the deeper discussions in the mundane. The exotic flavors from earlier dates, eel pepperlinger in memory, their strangeness now part of the symposium's fabric. Blending with the wine's warmth and the lamp's fading glow, the crater empties again, its contents fueling the night's intimacy. But the hour grows late, the lamps burning low, casting long shadows across the android. The flute girl's melody slows, its notes a gentle lullaby, and the guests' voices soften, their thoughts turning inward. You sense the symposium nearing its peak, the balance of wine and words teetering. But as the night winds down, what final reflections will emerge, and how will the evening's end shape the guests' bonds? Winding down the aftermath of indulgence, the symposium in your Athenian home has reached its twilight. The andron, now steeped in the soft, waning glow of oil lamps, their wicks burning low, casting long shadows across the painted walls. It's around 450 BCE, and you recline on your cline, the woolen cushions slightly flattened from hours of lounging, a kylix of diluted wine resting in your hand, its contents nearly gone. The guest Scalius, the merchant, Lysander, the poet, Theron, the assemblyman, and others lean back on their clenny, their voices quieter now, softened by the wine's gentle haze and the late hour. The flute girl's melody has slowed to a faint, almost ghostly hum, blending with the distant chirp of crickets outside and the occasional crackle of the hearth's dying embers. The crater at the room's center is nearly empty, its ruby surface reflecting the fading light, and you, as symposiarch, sense the night winding down, the aftermath of indulgence settling over the gathering like a soft blanket. The air is heavy with the mingled scents of wine, olive oil, and the lingering traces of exotic dishes, smoked eel, pepper-dusted lentils, now reduced to scattered crumbs and olive pits on the low tables. The earlier games of Cotobos and Scolia have faded, their playful energy giving way to a reflective calm. You notice the small details, the faint sheen of oil on Callias's fingers as he sets his kylix down, the way Lysander's head tilts slightly, his poet's eyes half closed in thought, and Theron's slower sips, his youthful ambition mellowed by the night's rhythm. The andron feels intimate, the shared hours of wine, food, and words forging a bond that lingers in the silence. You propose a final toast, your voice low and soothing, like the rustle of leaves in the courtyard, to the night, and the wisdom it brings. The guests raise their kylixes, their movements sluggish but deliberate, and a few drops of wine splash onto the floor, joining the libations offered to Dionysus and Athena throughout the evening. The act is familiar, a closing ritual that signals the symposium's end, grounding the night in gratitude. The wine, now from the crater's dregs, is slightly warmer, its resinous temps softened by hours of mixing, and you sip slowly, savoring its faint fruitiness as the room settles into stillness. Conversation has grown sparse. The earlier debates about the polis's strength ship, walls, or people replaced by quieter reflections. Callias speaks softly of a night spent on his ship, anchored off Aegina, the stars above mirroring the sea's calm. His voice is a steady drone, almost hypnotic, lulling the group into a shared reverie. Lysander murmurs a fragment of a poem, his words slurring slightly, describing the moon's light on the Ilissus River, its flow, a metaphor for time's passage. Even Theron, whose earlier boldness stirred the room, speaks now of his childhood, a memory of watching his father carve olive wood, the shavings curling like waves. The tales are personal, unguarded. The wine, stripping away pretense, sets her double flute aside and takes up a small lyre, its strings plucked gently to produce a delicate, repetitive tune that feels like a lullaby. She moves to refill the kylixes one last time, her steps silent, her tunic brushing the floor as she dips the ladle into the crater's dwindling contents. The act is almost ceremonial, a final offering of the night's communion. You notice the guests' postures softening, their bodies sinking deeper into the clini, the cushions bearing the weight of hours spent reclining. The lamps flicker, their oil nearly spent, and the room's warmth feels like an embrace, wrapping the symposium in a cocoon of quiet. The aftermath of indulgence is not chaos, but a gentle unraveling. The exotic flavors, the games, the heated debates have settled into a shared memory, their edges softened by the wine's haze. You think of the symposiums, habits reclining, sharing bowls, diluting wine, flicking kotobos, dregsand, how they wove the night together, each act a thread in the polis's fabric. The andron is strewn with small traces of the evening, olive pits scattered on the floor, a faint stain of wine on a cushion, the myrtle sprigs near the crater, now wilted but still fragrant. These are the remnants of connection, of a night spent bridging the ordinary and the profound. You rise slightly, your cline creaking, and address the guests, your voice a soothing murmur. The night grows late, and the stars watch over Athens. Let us part with thanks for this gathering. The guests nod, their movements slow, and begin to rise, their chitons rumpled, their sandals retrieved from the doorway. Callias clasps your forearm, his grip warm, promising to host the next symposium. Lysander offers a sleepy smile, muttering a line of verse as he steps into the cool night air. Theron, his ambition quieted, thanks you earnestly. His youth softened by the evening's intimacy, the slave begins to clear the tables, stacking clay dishes with a soft clink, while the flute girl gathers her instruments. Her presence, a quiet echo of the night's music. You stand at the threshold, the courtyard's fig tree rustling in the breeze, and watch the guests disappear into the darkened streets, their voices fading. The symposium has ended, but its echoes linger in the bonds formed, the stories shared, the flavors savored. As you turn back to the andron, the lamps nearly out, you wonder, how will these nights shape the polis's future, and what echoes will carry into the dawn? Echoes through time, reflections on ancient customs in the modern world. The andron of your Athenian home lies quiet now, the oil lamps reduced to mere flickers, their wicks nearly spent, casting faint shadows across the walls. It's around 450 BCE, and the symposium has drawn to a close. The guests Callias, Lysander, Theron, and others, having departed into the cool Athenian night, their sandals scuffing softly on the stone streets. You recline alone on your cline, the woolen cushions flattened from hours of use, a kylix empty in your hand, its clay still warm from your grip. The crater at the rune's center stands empty, its ruby dregs absorbed into the floor alongside olive pits and wine stains, remnants of a night filled with exotic flavors, games, and tales. The flute girl has gone, her lyre's final notes lingering like a whisper, and the hearth's embers glow faintly, their crackle a soft lullaby. As symposiarch, you linger in the aftermath, reflecting on the night's rituals and their echoes through time. A bridge to a world far beyond your own. You rise slowly, your kitten rumpled, and step into the courtyard, where the air is crisp, scented with fig leaves and the distant temps of olive groves. The polis sleeps, its hum replaced by the chirp of crickets and the rustle of a breeze through the rooftops. The symposium, with its strange habits reclining on Clinny, mixing wine in the crater, sharing thrushes and dates with fingers feels, both intimate and timeless. A ritual that bound you and your guests in a fleeting moment of communion. Yet, as you stand under the starlit sky, you sense these customs are more than fleeting. They are threads in a tapestry that stretches forward, touching lives long after the lamps have gone out. The symposium was a microcosm of Athens, its practices rooted in the polis's rhythms. The diluted wine, tempered to foster clarity, reflected the Greek ideal of moderation, a balance between indulgence and restraint that shaped civic life. You think of the crater, its careful mixing a symbol of harmony, ensuring no guest fell into Dionysian excess. This ritual, so ordinary to you, was a quiet act of discipline, a reminder that even in leisure, the polis valued order. The reclining posture, odd yet natural, leveled merchant, poet, and politician, creating a space where ideas flowed freely. From Callias's tales of trade to Lysander's poetic musings and Theron's ambitious debates, these moments, though mundane, were the polis's heartbeat, fostering bonds that strengthened its social fabric. The foods, too, carried meaning. The humble maza of your morning, the olives and lentils of midday, and the symposium's exotic offerings, eel from Boeotia, pepper from distant shores, tied you to the land and sea, to farmers, fishermen, and traders whose labor sustained Athens. Each bite was a story, the olive's briny tang, a gift from Athena, the date's sweetness a whisper of foreign markets, the pepper's bite a spark from lands you'll never see. These flavors, shared with fingers in communal bowls, wove the guests together, their hands brushing as they reached, their laughter softening rivalries. The symposium's weird habit seating without utensils, flicking wine in singing skull you were, not mere quirks, but rituals of connection, grounding the abstract in the tactile. You step back into the air now cooler, the lamps extinguished, leaving only the hearth's faint glow. The room feels like a memory, its scattered olive pits and wine stains a testament to the night's intimacy. You think of how these customs might resonate in a distant future, in a world unimaginable to you. The symposium's structure, its games, its shared meals would echo in gatherings across centuries, from Roman banquets to modern dinner parties, where people still gather to share food and stories under the glow of artificial lights. The act of mixing wine, so central to your night, might find parallels in careful measures of hospitality, where hosts balance indulgence with care to ensure their guests' comfort. The polis's reliance on trade, evident in the dates and pepper, would grow into vast networks, linking continents in ways you cannot fathom. The olives, a staple of your life, would remain a symbol of the Mediterranean, their oil-fueling cuisines far removed from your clay amphorae. Even the flute girl's music, her lyre's soft notes, would echo in songs that lull listeners to sleep, a reminder that music, like food, binds hearts across time. The symposium's debates and ship's walls, and people would persist in questions of power and community, shaping societies that inherit Athens's democratic spark. You sit on the edge of your Klein, the silence wrapping around you like a cloak. The night's rituals, though rooted in the ordinary, were acts of resilience, a celebration of the polis's ability to thrive amid scarcity and uncertainty. The farmers who grew your barley, the fishermen who netted your eel, the traders who brought your spices all were part of this night, their labor woven into every bite and sip. As you reflect, you feel a quiet pride in hosting this gathering, in creating a space where Athens's pulse was felt. However briefly, the stars outside grow brighter, their light filtering through the courtyard's open roof. You think of the guests, now scattered across the polis, carrying the symposium's warmth with them. The bonds forged tonight through wine, food, and words will linger, perhaps shaping a vote in the assembly or a deal in the agora. But for now, the Andron is still, its echoes fading into the night. You rise, the tiles cool under your feet, and prepare to rest. The day's labors and the night's indulgence settling into your bones. Let the echoes of this history fade as you drift into rest. The polis's rhythms carrying you gently toward sleep, like a boat on a calm sea, its waves whispering of time's endless flow.